Welcome. I'm Karen Field Bullock, and this is my course, A Spiritual Path to True Love. Now that we've covered a lot of basic ideas about what love is and what love isn't, I want to approach love in this segment from a different direction. This time I want to look at how being in love is related to attraction, growth, and spirit. In today's lesson, I'm going to introduce a couple of simple terms. The first term is proper distancing, and the second term is one I think I've already used, critical points of growth. Proper distancing is easy to understand, and it's something you almost certainly already put into practice. It's the idea of keeping the right amount of space between yourself and each person in your life. When people are at the wrong distance, the result is some form of pain. Think about how uncomfortable you'd feel if a stranger got too close to you. Or think how you might have felt when you were a teenager and you realized you needed to move away from your parents, but you weren't ready to swing it financially. Or think of the pain you'd feel if your sweetheart went away for months on end. When you can keep each person in your life at the proper distance, given who you both are and what you need and want from each other, you can avoid that kind of pain more and give more of your attention to your feelings of love, whether compassionate love, romantic love, or whatever type of love is appropriate for that person. But proper distancing requires constant adjustments. Think about a mother and infant. Generally, their proper distance is to be very close much of the time, but with breaks for the mother as needed. If mother and child are far away from each other for too long, both mother and child feel great emotional pain, anxiety, and heartache. But if the mother is always with her baby and never gets time to herself, she'll be stressed, which will stress the baby. Whether you're too close or too far, it's painful to not be at the proper distance. In romantic love, the same principle applies, except that the distances and need for closeness are different. Each couple has to figure out their own proper distances, a certain amount of close intimacy, certain amounts of greater and lesser distance, according to their own needs at the time, so that they can avoid pain and discomfort as much as possible, which would get in the way of their feelings of love. Considering the many diverse lifestyles of couples today, though, there's no one right distance that will suit every pair. Proper distancing depends on the people and the situations. This is all just common sense. But common sense breaks down quickly when shoulds get in the way, when what's proper in one sense is improper in another, or when people change over time. The shoulds we have in our heads about love present a major stumbling block to understanding how to gauge a proper distance, especially in some families. One misconception is that being in love means being very close, and therefore that couples in love should try to be as close as possible, doing nearly everything together and sharing every little detail of their lives. Of course, people have the right to do that if they want to. And if it works for you, that's great. But over time, too much togetherness naturally is going to force one, if not both partners, to make an awful lot of compromises. And too much compromise undermines self-love. Compromise is important, but in a true love relationship, both partners have to be true to themselves as well. In family life, some people think that brothers and sisters should always remain close after they grow up, or else they don't love each other. When young adults go their separate ways, they may get criticized for not staying close to each other. But the shoulds that dominate the thinking of critical family members lead them to do some very unloving things, like badger family members who don't cooperate with their ideas of what love should be. A second area of trouble in proper distancing is found wherever there are competing claims for what is proper. Take Romeo and Juliet, for example. From the standpoint of love and attraction, of nature surging from within them, and of the desire for a spiritual bond and a spiritual union, their proper distance was very close, but socially, in a society where family feuds were considered socially correct. The proper distance of a Capulet and a Montague was to stay far apart, since family members were required to put love of family first, where love was equal to loyalty and obedience. In society today, the same sorts of issues arise for a married partner in a conventional marriage who falls in love outside the marriage. The issues include promises and loyalties versus the surprising experience of falling in love. And an employee of a company who falls in love with another employee from the same department faces similar competing claims of proper distancing when their relationship itself is deemed against company policy, as if civilization ought to conquer nature and spirit. Competing claims regarding proper distancing can even occur in a conventional marriage when one partner wants more intimacy or more space than the other. When that happens, the clash between self-love and loyalty to the partner causes pain. A third major stumbling block to proper distancing is that people change over time. Children are a perfect example because while babies need to be close to their parents, kids change quickly, and by the time they're teens, they need much more distance. Not only do parents make mistakes in trying to determine how much freedom to give their child from time to time, but children soon weigh in on how much freedom and distance from their parents they want. In addition, social institutions like schools and workplaces enforce a lot of distancing of family members that parents can't control, sometimes causing a lot of pain for both parents and children. Having children throws a couple into parenting roles constructed at least partly by imitating their respective parents, two completely different sets of role models. As this mess of unspoken influences surfaces during the parenting years, it brings up an avalanche of conflicting expectations that can pit the couple against each other. Even though you once perceived profound goodness in your partner, it may be hard to hold on to that vision of goodness as you watch your partner turn into one of his or her parents. Some people establish a weekly date night so they can get some distance from being parents and return to being themselves for a few hours a week. Others throw their hands in the air and file for divorce, taking turns raising their children from separate households in blocks of weeks and weekend visits. Still others mutually agree to open up their relationships so they can maximize their time with their children, reduce time with their spouse, and get more of what they need through other relationships. All of these approaches are legitimate attempts to achieve the optimal love and the least amount of pain through proper distancing. In adulthood, one of the main ways people change is in our attitudes and worldviews. When fortunes shift and minds and bodies morph from young to old, some people become more hopeful and easygoing, while others become more embittered and self-pitying. Others are more fearful and dependent, and still others are more agitated and aggressive. One partner's view of the world might darken following some financial misfortune, while the other partner may learn to view the world more and more positively after joining a club or a prayer group, playing in a team sport, or volunteering for a charity organization and adopting the group's positive outlook. One partner's career success might inspire the other partner, or it might spark the other partner's jealousy. One partner may start to get flashbacks of a childhood trauma or a war experience, causing anxiety or withdrawal from life or the relationship, or triggering inappropriate behavior. One partner's health may decline significantly, shifting the other partner into a caretaker role. When roles and fortunes shift, new attitudes surface that can either help or harm the couple's ability to stay in love or to even like each other. And negative changes in one partner's attitudes towards life can make it necessary for the other partner to perhaps physically or at least emotionally move further away. As everybody knows, though, proper distancing isn't always possible. Sometimes you just can't get away, or you just can't get close enough to what you want, as the case may be. When you're feeling stuck in your relationship or your career, and proper distancing doesn't seem to be an option, it's time to flip the story from your dilemma to your salvation. Instead of cursing it or feeling oppressed by the challenge, trust that it's bringing you face to face with one or more of your critical points of growth, and that by growing through it, you'll be one step closer to the success you've always dreamed of. A point of growth is nothing more than your next step in a particular growth process. It's the next action you need to take at the frontier of your experience to become something more and better by virtue of being more authentically you, like the next higher version of who you really are. Some growth is optional, like building skill and tiddlywinks, when your dream in life is to be a farmer. It's nice, and all skill building requires you to exercise your determination and will, which is always good. You might enjoy tiddlywinks at the end of a long day of farming, but it's not critical for farmers to build their determination and will through tiddlywinks. What's critical for success is that farmers apply their determination and will in the hard work of farming. What makes a point of growth critical is that in order to succeed in life in the way you define success, you cannot skip that growth step. Your most critical points of growth in finding true love have much less to do with your scores on standardized tests, your athletic awards, or your success in the workplace, and everything to do with shoring up your weakest character traits, specifically in regard to healthy love relationships. Here's a little love story from my grade school days that proves the point. On my first day of 4th grade, I fell madly in love with a new boy in class. A few years later, this boy wanted me to come over to a mutual friend's house, and so he asked her to call me and invite me over along with some other couples. Not only did he decide not to call me, not to make the call himself, that is, but he was so nervous to sit next to me when I got there that he shook, and he couldn't bring himself to put his arm around me. The next time I saw him, he had twisted his attitude around and decided that it was my job to make a move, serving myself up to him on a silver platter so that he wouldn't have to grow. Sadly, I had to draw a line. Like so many young teenage boys, this boy wanted to enjoy all the goodies of manhood, starting with making out, without actually developing the courage to take the risks of manhood, including the risk of being rejected. Being bright in school, he tried to think his way around the problem to avoid the plain scariness of taking that risk with me. Although at the time he seemed to blame me in his mind for not approaching him, his critical point of growth in terms of the relationship success he wanted was to develop courage, face the fear, and make the move. Given his rejection, I knew that my critical point of growth as a girl trying to be loving was to accept him as he was and let him go. Although I tried, I later lashed out at him because I didn't yet know how to process my anger, hurt, and sadness. Instead, I just suppressed the feelings, and so they stayed inside of me and eventually came tumbling out. My point of growth at that point became learning how to process my emotions, to gain more self-control, to be a more mature person so that I could succeed in future love relationships. To summarize, proper distancing helps life go more smoothly, but when it's not possible, you'd be wise to look at the situation you're stuck with as a gift in disguise. First of all, because it gives you a more positive, growth-oriented attitude. But beyond that, the pain or discomfort you experience because of a lack of proper distancing signals an opportunity, an invitation to master a growth step that will be essential for achieving your ultimate success, as you yourself define success. That's the lesson for today. I hope you'll join me again next time when I'll present a deeper information about growth and show how it fits in with love and attraction. Bye for now.